Hey everybody, I'm going to show you how to make the policy envelope silhouette pocket that I used in my Steampunk Debutante album. And you're going to start with a policy envelope, and these are the Graphic 45 policy envelopes. And I just cut the very end of it off to remove the holes so that it would be open on both ends. And then once you've done that, you just want to go ahead and actually trace around the envelope. And this is going to be the first step in making a template to cut your paper so that it fits all the way along the inside of the envelope, including the flap. And then I'm using the Tim Holtz ruler to draw lines 1/8 of an inch in from every single side. This is most important on the flap. I'm just going to draw a line 1/8 of an inch in from every angle of the flap. And once you've made this template, store it with your policy envelopes so that you can easily cover your policy envelopes in the future, and you don't have to make a template every time you want to do this or something similar. And then after I've drawn a line 1/8 of an inch in from every single side, I'm going to take the envelope and I'm going to line it up with the lines so that I can redraw the curves of the envelope. So you can see I put the top of the envelope, I've lined it up with the line 1/8 of an inch in and drawn the curve, and now I'm lining it up on the left there and tracing around the curve, and now I'm lining it up on the right there and tracing around the curve. And that way it's going to follow the same curve. My template for the inside will follow the same curve as the actual outside of the envelope. So I've now cut my paper down to the size I need, and you see how I'm going to lay my template over it so that I can cut it to fit the flap. So I'm just going to line my template up with the end there, and I'm going to trace around it and cut it out with my scissors. So I'm just going to grab a pencil and trace around. Okay, and now that that's done, I'm just going to go back in with my scissors and I'm going to cut just that end so that it will follow the curve of the flap pretty nicely. And basically what I'm going to end up with is 1/8 of an inch all the way around, including on the flap. And that's just going to be nice and visually pleasing and give me a black border all the way around. So there you see how it looks on the flap. Okay, so now I'm just going to ink around the edges, and I'm using black soot ink, and this paper is from the Curtain Call collection by Graphic 45. And it's one of the B-sides, it's just a funky geometric sort of almost Art Deco pattern. And so I've put adhesive on the back of the paper, and now I'm just going to fold it under so that the flap has a little give. I just want to make sure it's creased there on the edge, and then I'll fold over the envelope. So I want it to fit the envelope precisely. I don't want it to gap or anything like that. And so now that I've got that done, I'm just choosing another piece from the Curtain Call collection to decorate the outside of my flap, and I'm going to use my same template, and I'm going to trace it so that I will have that same curve on the front or outside of the flap. And when you're making this pocket, the flap actually goes at the bottom, so make sure your papers are facing the right direction. So now I'm just cutting it out, and then I'm going to ink the edges in the same black soot ink, and then I'm going to use a liquid glue to adhere it to the front of the flap. And you'll notice that the pocket flap on the policy envelope has a hole in it. The hole is going to be covered on both sides now, and you don't need the hole, so you can just go ahead and cover the hole with your paper. You don't have to punch it or anything. So I'm using Scotch Quick Dry to stick this down, which is my favorite liquid glue. Alright, so once that's glued down, you're going to attach your main image. And it's most fun if you use a tall silhouette of some kind. That way she'll be sort of floating on the background that you've chosen. So I'm using this image from the Graphic 45 Curtain Call collection, and I'm just putting her on the flap where I want her. And then I'm going to hold her and flip it over, and I'm going to use a white gel pen to trace the edge of the flap where I need her to be. And then I'm going to take my liquid glue and I'm going to cover the area of the white line. So I'm just going to cover the white line and anything beneath it with the liquid glue. And then I'm going to leave the image upside down like this so that I can apply the flap exactly in the right place. I'm kind of getting to the end of my quick dry here. I need a new bottle. Alright, so I'm just going to line this up with the white line, making sure the white line is covered, and then glue it down. Just going to wipe away any areas the glue might have leaked, and I'm going to flip it back and forth to make sure there's no glue leaking out on the back, because I don't want that flap to get glued down. And so what happens is you can actually put a photo on that mat, and she'll be silhouetted in front of the photo if you choose. So now I've taken a die cut from the Graphic 45 Curtain Call collection. It's just a record. It says Graphic 45 on it. And I found the nestability that's the same size. So I'm going to cut it out in thin chipboard and also in the pattern paper from the collection so that it'll be, the chipboard will be covered on both sides. And I'm just going to take my glue again and cover the chipboard with the glue and the paper. So I'm going to put the glue on the back of the paper, getting right up to the edges. And then I'm going to put that on the chipboard, make sure it's lined up perfectly, exactly where I want it. And I'm going to kind of smooth it out. Then I'm going to put glue on the record die cut and put that down on the other side. And that way my chipboard piece is going to be covered front and back. And this is actually going to be how you hold the flap shut, is with this chipboard piece. So now that the chipboard piece is covered with paper and dried, I'm going to ink the edges of both sides with the black soot ink. I want to take away any of that raw chipboard cover, any white, anything like that. And now I'm going to take a 1/2 inch wide foam tape, and I'm going to put a strip at the bottom of the envelope on the back and at the top of the envelope on the back. I'm just going to do edge to edge, and that's going to create a wide channel underneath the envelope where once the envelope is adhered to my layout, I can slide a tag underneath. Okay, so and now I'm just measuring the width of my channel so I know what size to make my tag. And the size of the tag is going to vary from layout to layout depending on, how big you make your envelope. You can cut the envelope down a lot shorter. It just depends on the papers and images that you want to use and what you want to do with the project. So now I've cut a piece of the Basic Gray Basics in Craft that looks like Ledger. The colors of that go very well with this paper collection from Graphic 45 actually. And then I've also cut another piece of the Curtain Call paper, and I'm inking the edges of both of those with the black soot distress ink. And I'm going to adhere the curtain call paper to the front of the cardstock tag. And I'm just going to use the ATG for this. I'm just making sure I get close to the edges. And I'm just centering it down. So I have an 1/8 of an inch black cardstock border. So that's going to mimic the 1/8 of an inch black border I have on the policy envelope. And now I'm going to slide it underneath my envelope. And I'm going to take my chipboard disc and I'm going to kind of situate my tag how I want it to be underneath my envelope. And then I'm going to figure out where my disc needs to be so that it'll be attached to the tag, but we'll slide over the envelope and hold the flap of the envelope closed. So now that I know exactly where my disc needs to be, I'm just going to punch it with a 1/16 of an inch hole punch all the way through both the chipboard disc and the cardstock mat. And I'm just taking a black brad and I'm going to put it through the disc and then through the hole in the mat, and then I'm going to open the legs of the brad on the back of the mat, and then I'm going to adhere the craft journaling spot, and that will cover the legs of the brad. So I'm just pushing it through. I'm just using a black glittered brad from Making Memories. And so I'm just going to spread out the legs of the brad and make sure they're as flat as they can possibly be. And then I'm going to put adhesive around the edges of my journaling spot and make sure that my photo mat is facing the right direction before I put it down so the writing's not upside down or anything. And then it's pretty much done at this point. You know, once it's adhered to the page, it'll slide between the page and the envelope and it'll hold the flap of the envelope shut. And then when you want to pull the flap down, you'll just remove the tag. And the opening, because you cut the bottom off of the envelope, it's open on the top as well. And that'll enable you to put a tag inside the envelope with more room for photos or journaling or whatever you like. So that's how that works. I hope you have fun using it on a project, and thanks for watching.